Intensity in affection often signals unbalanced attachment, and understanding this concept is not just about analyzing someone else's emotions, but about learning to read the psychological patterns behind human relationships. When a person elevates you to a symbolic level, placing your photos on altars, treating you like a sacred idea, or building rituals around your existence, it reflects something deeper than admiration. It reveals an internal imbalance where emotion surpasses reality, and you, unknowingly, become the vessel for feelings that were never truly about you in the first place. People who experience this type of emotional intensity don't always intend harm. In fact, their actions often stem from unmet needs, unresolved wounds, or a history of feeling ignored or unworthy. When someone suddenly enters their life and gives them hope, connection, or validation, they may cling to that feeling so tightly that it transforms into something excessive. Instead of seeing you as a human being, with flaws, moods, inconsistencies, and boundaries, they begin to view you as a stabilizing force, a source of emotional sanctuary. And because they fear losing that feeling, they elevate you to a place where no one can compete. But the problem with being placed on a symbolic pedestal is that it erases your actual identity. You stop being a person and become a projection, an ideal, a story they tell themselves to fill the gaps in their own emotional landscape. This is why such intensity, though flattering on the surface, can be alarming beneath it. Whenever someone invests more emotion into the fantasy of you than into understanding who you truly are, the attachment becomes lopsided. They pour energy into an illusion, not into the relationship. And illusions are dangerous because they demand perfection, something no human can maintain. The imbalance isn't simply about the level of affection, it's about the meaning they attach to you. When affection turns symbolic, it reveals a lack of grounding in the relationship. Instead of healthy closeness, built through communication, shared experiences, and mutual respect, the person forms an inner narrative where you become the solution to their emotional needs. You become their comfort, their escape, their hope, their anchor. But none of this comes from direct connection. It comes from deep psychological needs that existed long before you arrived. This is why intense affection often arrives quickly, unexpectedly, and without logical progression. It skips steps. It bypasses gradual growth. It shows up fully formed, like a fire that started without a spark. And because it grows too fast, it cannot stabilize. Real intimacy takes time. It requires curiosity, patience, listening, and learning. But symbolic intimacy, such as putting someone on an altar, doesn't come from knowing the person. It comes from needing them to fit a role. Many people misunderstand this as passion. They mistake intensity for depth. They believe that powerful emotions must be proof of something important, something destined, something rare. But healthy love does not rush to make you its meaning in order to avoid confronting its own emptiness. Healthy love is rooted in choice, understanding, and respect, not in worship, possession, or romanticized symbolism. Unbalanced attachment forms when someone relies on you to regulate their emotional world. They treat your presence like a remedy. If you smile, their day is saved. If you withdraw, their world collapses. Their emotional stability becomes tied to your responses, your mood, your attention. This is not affection. It is dependency wrapped in admiration. The danger lies in the invisibility of this pattern. At first it feels flattering. It feels special, unique, intense, something people spend years trying to find. But the truth is that intensity without stability is a warning sign, not a blessing. It signals that the person is not connecting with you but with the emotional relief they believe you provide. And when someone idealizes you to the point of symbolism, they inevitably lose touch with reality. They don't see your boundaries, they see obstacles. They don't hear your words, they hear what they want to believe. They don't build connection, they build narratives. Being idealized means being misunderstood. It means being seen in extremes, perfect, flawless, extraordinary. But the moment you act human, make mistakes, set boundaries, express discomfort, the illusion cracks. And when illusions crack, some people react with confusion, disappointment, fear, or even resentment, not because you did anything wrong, but because their internal image of you collapses, leaving them face to face with the truth they tried to avoid. You are not the fantasy they constructed. This is why recognizing the signs of unbalanced attachment matters. It protects your emotional well-being but also teaches you compassion. Understanding the psychology behind someone's intensity allows you to navigate the situation without absorbing their expectations or mistaking their devotion for compatibility. You learn that affection is not measured by how strongly someone feels, but by how responsibly they handle those feelings. Balance is the foundation of a healthy relationship, and balance cannot exist when one person is elevated so high they stop belonging to themselves. Intensity may sound romantic, but unresolved wounds often disguise themselves as passion. They make a person cling, idolize, or idealize because they fear losing the little emotional security they've found. And if you unknowingly become the center of that stability, you will also become the center of their anxiety, their hope, and their fear. No one should carry that weight. True affection is steady, grounded, and patient. It sees you, not the fantasy. It learns you, not imagines you. It respects your space, your individuality, and your boundaries. And most importantly, it does not require altars, symbols, or excessive gestures to feel real. Intensity looks impressive, balance feels safe. And in any relationship, romantic, emotional, or psychological, safety is the greatest form of love there is. Idealization can replace authentic connection in ways that are subtle at first, but profoundly damaging over time. When someone creates a fantasy version of you in their mind, they are no longer engaging with the real person standing in front of them. They're interacting with a mental projection stitched together from their desires, fears, unmet needs, and imagination. And once that happens, every moment of the relationship becomes distorted. You are no longer being understood, you are being interpreted. You're not being seen, you're being imagined. That shift is the root of emotional imbalance, unrealistic expectations, and the eventual disconnection that follows. At its core, idealization isn't about you, it's about what you symbolize. Maybe you represent comfort, security, hope, validation, or escape. Instead of building a relationship with your real personality, your real imperfections, and your real complexity, the person attaches themselves to the feeling they associate with you. You become a solution instead of a partner, a fantasy instead of a human. And no real relationship can thrive when one person becomes the emotional placeholder for someone else's internal story. This is why idealization feels intoxicating in the beginning. You feel admired, appreciated, even adored. The intensity of attention can feel like love, devotion, or destiny. But beneath that warmth lies a deeper issue. They are not falling for your reality. They are falling for the character they've cast you as. And characters can't disappoint, people can. Eventually they'll encounter parts of you that don't fit their fantasy, and that's when the cracks start to appear. Idealization always creates unrealistic expectations because fantasies are perfect. They never disagree, never fail, never require boundaries. But real people do. When your authentic self emerges, their illusion becomes threatened. Suddenly, the qualities they praised become flaws. The boundaries you set become obstacles. The independence they admired becomes distance. And because they were never relating to you authentically, your humanity feels like betrayal. They aren't disappointed in you. They're disappointed that you are not the version they invented. This is why idealization often leads to emotional dependency. When someone places their emotional stability in the hands of a fantasy, they begin to rely on you to maintain that illusion. They need you to act a certain way, respond a certain way, behave consistently with the role they've assigned you. And if you don't, they feel anxious, insecure, or even abandoned, not because of your actions, but because their imagined world is collapsing. Dependency doesn't grow from love, it grows from fear. Fear of loss, fear of loneliness, fear of facing their own unhealed parts. The fantasy becomes a coping mechanism, a source of emotional regulation. They tie their sense of worth, comfort, or happiness to how closely you align with the image they've crafted. And suddenly, you're no longer interacting with an equal partner. You're managing someone's expectations of a role you never agreed to play. Authenticity becomes impossible in such a dynamic. If you try to show your true thoughts, feelings, or flaws, it threatens the fantasy. If you voice concerns or boundaries, it disrupts the narrative. If you grow, change, or evolve, it reshapes the character they've built around you. And instead of welcoming that growth, they resist it, because the fantasy cannot adapt. It must remain static, perfect, unchallenged. This makes real connection impossible. You're not relating to each other, you're relating to two different realities. The tragedy of idealization is that it prevents genuine closeness. The person believes they love you deeply, but in truth, they love the idea of you. And an idea cannot hold your hand, comfort you, argue with you, laugh with you, or grow with you. It cannot share vulnerability or build trust. It is stuck in their mind, unchangeable and unreachable. Love requires slow discovery. It requires patience, understanding, curiosity, and mutual growth. But idealization rushes toward emotional certainty without earning it. It declares love before learning you, assumes compatibility before observing it, and expects connection without building it. And when the fantasy collapses, as it always does, they may feel devastated, confused, or even betrayed. They may think you changed, when the truth is, they never learned who you really were. This is why idealization breeds disappointment. The higher the pedestal, the harder the fall. When someone clings to the fantasy, they attach themselves to an impossible standard, one you can't maintain and one they can't sustain. Eventually, disillusionment breaks the illusion, and both parties feel the impact. You may feel misunderstood, suffocated, or pressured. They may feel insecure, rejected, or abandoned. And none of this stems from reality. It stems from the space between the fantasy and the truth. Recognizing the signs of idealization early can prevent emotional strain. If someone praises you excessively, ignores your flaws, rushes emotional closeness, or reacts strongly to normal human imperfections, it's a sign they are relating more to the idea of you than to your true self. It means the relationship is built on emotional projection instead of genuine connection. Healthy connection requires vulnerability on both sides. It requires room for flaws, disagreements, and boundaries. It requires seeing each other as whole, complex humans who are learning and evolving. Authentic love doesn't demand that you remain perfect. It supports your growth. It doesn't rely on fantasies. It builds reality. It doesn't worship you. It walks beside you. To replace idealization with authentic connection, the person must learn to separate emotion from imagination, hope from projection, desire from dependency. They must learn to face the parts of themselves they are avoiding, instead of placing the responsibility on someone else to fill those voids. And you must stay grounded in your identity, refusing the pedestal and choosing authenticity, even when it risks disappointing the fantasy. Because real connection begins not when someone falls for your idea, but when they embrace your reality, unfiltered, imperfect, and human. Idealization can feel flattering, but authenticity feels safe. And in the end, safety is where true intimacy grows. Strong feelings need healthy boundaries, and this truth becomes even more important when emotions rise quickly, intensely, and without understanding. Intensity can feel powerful. It can sweep you off your feet, create excitement, and feel like something meaningful is happening. But without boundaries, intensity becomes unstable. It stops being a genuine connection and becomes projection, a way for someone to pour their unprocessed emotions into another person. And when someone invests too deeply, too fast, without truly knowing you, the relationship risks becoming imbalanced, overwhelming, and unsafe for both sides. Boundaries are not walls. They are the structure that keeps emotions from spilling into chaos. They ensure that both individuals remain grounded in reality instead of drowning in the stories they create about each other. But when someone feels strongly and lacks emotional regulation, they may try to merge too quickly, seeking closeness without understanding, intimacy without patience, and commitment without clarity. This is where feelings become dangerous, not because they are wrong, but because they become bigger than the relationship itself. Intensity without boundaries often looks like urgency. The person may feel compelled to talk to you constantly, share everything too early, or expect emotional availability you never agreed to. They may misinterpret neutral actions as signs of rejection, or see ordinary affection as evidence of deep destiny. Their emotional world becomes tied to your responses long before you've built the foundation to hold that responsibility. And once someone ties their sense of stability to another person's behavior, the relationship becomes fragile. Projection is at the core of boundaryless intensity. When someone projects their hidden desires or wounds onto you, they aren't seeing you, they're seeing what they want or fear. They may imagine that you understand them perfectly, that you complete them, or that you are the cure for their loneliness. These ideas feel romantic, but they are actually signals that the person is relating to an internal fantasy. Real connection requires seeing the other person as they actually are, flawed, independent, uncertain, growing. Projection requires none of that. Projection uses another person as a canvas. Recognizing the signs of emotional overinvestment early is essential for maintaining mutual respect and emotional safety. Without awareness, one person may rapidly take on a role they never volunteered for: caretaker, healer, rescuer, ideal partner. And the other may unknowingly invest so much emotional energy that they cannot separate their identity from the connection. Both people suffer when boundaries collapse. Emotional overinvestment often appears in subtle ways first. Someone may expect immediate replies, interpret silence as emotional danger, or expect a level of closeness that has not been established. They may feel threatened by your independence, or misinterpret your boundaries as personal rejection. They may push for emotional intimacy too soon, revealing their inner world in an attempt to fast-forward closeness. All of this is a sign not of love, but of emotional urgency, a sign that someone is using the relationship to regulate their internal distress. Healthy boundaries slow down intensity naturally. They create space for emotions to grow without flooding the relationship. They protect both individuals from becoming overwhelmed and ensure that closeness develops through shared experiences, not imagination or pressure. Boundaries teach people how to stay connected while staying independent, how to feel deeply without losing themselves in the process. Without boundaries, both sides lose clarity. The person with intense feelings begins to lose perspective, confusing desperation with passion. The other person may feel pressured, invaded, or responsible for emotions they did not create. One person may begin to shrink to avoid conflict, while the other pushes harder for closeness. This imbalance creates exhaustion rather than intimacy. Boundaries allow feelings to breathe. They remind people that emotions are real, but they must be matched with responsibility. You can feel deeply and still move slowly. You can desire connection and still respect the other person's pace. You can admire someone while giving them the space to exist outside your expectations. Boundaries aren't meant to limit love, they're meant to protect it. The strongest relationships are not built on uncontrolled emotional expression, they are built on balanced emotional investment. They grow through mutual respect, not emotional pressure. They thrive when both individuals feel safe, not overwhelmed. When someone recognizes their feelings become too intense, they can choose self-reflection instead of projection. They can pause, regulate, and ensure that what they're feeling is about the connection, not about their internal wounds or unmet needs. Healthy boundaries also protect against dependency. When two people maintain their own identities, responsibilities, and emotional worlds, they avoid becoming overly reliant on each other for stability. This creates a healthier bond, one where love is chosen, not clung to, where presence is appreciated, not demanded, where emotions enhance life, not control it. Strong feelings without boundaries burn fast and fade painfully. Strong feelings with boundaries grow slowly and last meaningfully. Boundaries allow love to mature instead of explode. They create space for honest communication, understanding, and emotional safety. When both people understand that intensity does not equal intimacy, they build connections based on truth rather than fantasy. In the end, healthy boundaries are the highest form of love you can give yourself and another person. They say, "My feelings are real, but so is your autonomy. My desire for closeness matters, but so does your comfort. My emotions are strong, but I will not let them overpower you." Intensity becomes love only when it respects limits. And connection becomes real only when both hearts feel safe enough to stay. Emotional symbolism reflects personal needs, not romantic destiny, and this is one of the most misunderstood realities in human relationships. When someone creates altars, rituals, or symbolic gestures centered around you, it may appear dramatic, romantic, or deeply spiritual on the surface. But beneath that surface lies something far more psychological than mystical. These symbolic actions rarely have anything to do with your shared connection. Instead, they reveal what is happening inside the individual performing them. They are expressions of their emotional world, shaped by their unmet needs, personal history, internal fantasies, and coping mechanisms. The symbols may involve you, but the meaning belongs entirely to them. This is why understanding emotional symbolism is essential, not to mock it, not to fear it, but to interpret it correctly. Humans use symbolism when feelings are too intense, too confusing, or too unprocessed to express directly. Symbols become containers for emotions that cannot be held in ordinary ways. Placing your photo on an altar, creating rituals around your presence or absence, or imbuing objects with special meaning does not indicate that the relationship is destined or spiritually ordained. Instead, it shows that the person is searching for psychological grounding through symbolic expression. Emotional symbolism becomes a language that reflects how someone processes their internal experience. But it is not a language of mutual connection. You were chosen as the symbol, but you are not the author of the symbolism. You are not the source of their meaning, you are merely the focus onto which they project that meaning. Once you understand this, the confusion dissolves. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start seeing the bigger picture. The person isn't expressing love, they're expressing something unresolved within themselves. Symbolism often emerges when someone lacks tools for emotional regulation. Instead of working through their feelings in healthy, constructive ways, through communication, reflection, or boundaries, they externalize those feelings into objects or rituals. It gives their emotions shape, form, and structure. It grants them a sense of control. And while this may provide temporary comfort, it does not strengthen the actual relationship because the symbolic act is inwardly focused. It is about soothing themselves, not connecting with you. This is why it's dangerous to interpret such gestures as signs of profound love or destiny. The meaning of the symbol comes from their psyche, not from your connection. It's similar to how someone might write letters they never send, talk to photos of someone who isn't present, or rehearse conversations in their mind. These actions reveal longing, desire, or emotional fixation, but they do not reflect the reality of a relationship that exists in the present moment, built on mutual understanding. Symbolic attachment is often rooted in personal history. A person who felt neglected or unseen may create rituals to feel emotionally anchored to someone. A person who fears abandonment may use symbolic gestures to create the illusion of closeness. A person who struggles with insecurity may elevate someone into a symbolic role to secure a sense of worth. And a person who has been conditioned to equate intensity with significance may believe that dramatic gestures make the relationship more meaningful. But symbols cannot create closeness where emotional maturity is missing. They might create the illusion of closeness for the person performing them, but that illusion does not extend to the actual relationship. This is where confusion often arises. One person feels deeply bonded because of the symbolic ritual, while the other may feel pressured, overwhelmed, or misunderstood. The emotional intensity does not reflect reality. It reflects the inner world of one person trying to stabilize their feelings through external means. When you interpret emotional symbolism accurately, fear and confusion dissipate. You no longer feel responsible for the intensity behind these gestures. You no longer feel obligated to match the emotional weight the other person has invested into their symbols. Instead, you see that their actions belong to them, not to the relationship, not to destiny, and not to you as an individual. This clarity protects your boundaries and allows you to navigate the situation with wisdom instead of guilt. Understanding this also teaches compassion. The person is not trying to manipulate or control, they are trying to cope with feelings they do not know how to handle. Their symbolic actions reveal their emotional vulnerability. It shows the depth of their inner world, not the depth of your mutual relationship. When you understand this, you can respond with empathy without sacrificing your emotional safety. Symbols often arise when people misinterpret infatuation as fate. They believe that the intensity of their emotions must be pointing to something cosmic or predestined. But emotions, especially intense ones, are rarely accurate maps of reality. They are reflections of personal longing, internal wounds, unmet needs, or unresolved stories. And when someone uses symbols to intensify those feelings, they reinforce their internal narrative, not the real relationship. The danger of misinterpreting emotional symbolism as romantic destiny is that it can trap both individuals in unrealistic expectations. One person believes the relationship is extraordinary because their internal experience feels extraordinary. The other may feel pressured or overwhelmed by a level of emotional significance they never agreed to. When the reality of the relationship fails to match the symbolic meaning, disappointment is inevitable. Symbolism without mutual connection leads to imbalance. It creates a one-sided emotional world that can become suffocating or confusing for the person being symbolized. They might feel objectified rather than loved, idolized rather than understood. The symbolic actions may feel like emotional weight rather than affection. True romantic connection does not need altars, rituals, or dramatic symbolic gestures. It needs communication, respect, boundaries, and shared experiences. It grows from what happens between two people, not from what one person creates in private. Authentic connection is built in the present moment, not in symbolic meanings carried from the past or projected into the future. Emotional symbolism is powerful, but it is personal. It tells the story of someone's inner world, not the story of the relationship. When you understand this, you can navigate the situation without fear or confusion. You learn to distinguish between emotional expression and emotional projection. You see that symbols may reflect intensity, but intensity does not equal intimacy. And most importantly, you realize that you are not responsible for the meaning someone attaches to you. Their symbolism may be heartfelt, but it is theirs, not destiny, not fate, and not a reflection of your obligations. Clarity protects you from misunderstanding, and in any deep relationship, clarity is one of the most important forms of safety there is.